Okay, we're starting.
Clara?
All right. Yeah, so I'm David Ean. Scott has introduced himself to you guys. Daniel Phillips in the back. So let's get your three names. What was your name?
I'm Clara.
Clara. Are you working on Battle of the Westman Kid or still? Which AFP?
Not sure.
Did you get an email from me or
Oh,
Daniel?
still. I think it's still.
Okay, so you're
Okay, sorry.
you guys are Battle of the Westman Kid. And what were your names?
Connor?
Connor? Adam. So Adam, Connor, Clara. Perfect. All right. So yeah, I'm David Ean. I'm the sound specialist and area supervisor for the Media Arts Lab here at the BYU Film Program. And as Scott was talking about earlier, we're all students, and I still feel like I just was in your shoes. I still feel super young in the program. So we'll all be learning from each other, but today we're focusing on the basics of sound, especially in boom operation and kind of set etiquette, which you do on set. And so sound is a very important part of film. It's half of the experience, right? There's the visual and there's the audio. And so it really, without sound, you wouldn't be immersed in the film, right? If you guys watch silent films, I don't know if they do that in 187. Watch silent films in one, I don't think so. Not yet. You will eventually. You'll watch silent films in this program. But it's once sound was released, you could really immerse the audience into a film. And so it's our job to make sure that the audio that is captured on set in production is clear and crisp so that the post-production people can really immerse the audience in the film. And then the storytelling, a lot of it comes from the dialogue. And you get the setting, you're immersing the setting through sound, and it really helps with the tone of the film with sound and music. Pre-production, we'll just breeze through this since you don't have to worry about it too much. You have to figure, when you're doing film, you have to figure what the role of sound is going to be. If it's like, and that's kind of a big, kind of ambiguous question about if it's going to, because sound can be considered a character, right? Whenever you hear a certain motif in music, it's like the Imperial March, right, for Darth Vader. If you hear that, you know the Empire's coming, Darth Vader's coming. Sound, and especially music in that sense, is a character. So in pre-production, you meet with your producer and your director and you figure out what role sound is going to have in the movie. And then you check out locations, you do location scouting. It's important that as a sound person, the head of the department is there to make sure that the surroundings, there isn't like a freeway passing by, so it's going to mess up all of your audio or anything like that. So in pre-production, it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of hiring, who your boom ops are going to be, who the post-production person's going to be, all that stuff. All right, so in production, your basic equipment, you're not going to use the built-in camera mic ever. You'll notice back there we're recording for our people who can't make it, and I have 2 microphones hooked up to that camera because the built-in microphones almost always are terrible unless you get specific. There's one that we have in the department we use for recording theatrical shows that has a really good built-in mic, but we still, even then, use a separate mic just because you can control it better, and it's its own separate entity, and so all of the design is focused on sound instead of being split between camera and sound. And so, your biggest and your most consistent tool of the trade is a shotgun mic. So it's a long, well, they vary. That one's even longer. That one's probably about a foot, maybe a foot and a half, and this one's 9 inches to a foot long. So shotgun mics are a super narrow pickup pattern. We'll talk about that a little bit later. A super hypercardioid, sometimes it is just called a shotgun pickup pattern. And this will pick up sound wherever I'm pointing it at. What's up, Micah? Hey. Another director. So when we attach it to a pole, we can look at the trajectory of where it's pointing, and that's where it's going to pick up sound. And we'll talk about where you want to point it in a little bit. We also have lavalier mics, which are little string mics on strings that you put on an actor, or you put on a desk if you want a spot mic, or on an animal. There's a lot of things. It's usually used for on people, though. You'll hide it somewhere on their clothes, in their hair, even in a hat. receiver goes to the sound mixer. So this is my mixing bag, I'll just put the receiver in there and it'll connect to my mixer. And on loft mics, because it's wireless, you have to pair the frequencies to each other. So these two are on the same frequency, and it's important to check it when you're at home, and then again when you're on set, because if you're in a higher traffic zone in the city zone, some frequencies might be being used by other equipment, maybe your own, maybe someone else's, and so you have to look for open frequencies where there's no competition, interference, that's the word, perfect. And I mean, I, as the sound mixer, will be doing a lot of that, so just this kind of an overview, but I get to worry about the frequencies. And luckily, we're shooting in kind of a wide open, middle of nowhere place, so hopefully we won't get much interference on our lavaliers. But with that, yeah, there are a lot of different accessories that you put on a lav to hide it. And I'll go through that because one of you guys might be helping put lavs on our talent, or our actors. So, there's these little handy bags that have a ton of different accessories. This is a mic belt, so you'll put it under the actor's shirt, and it has a little pouch for the receiver or the transmitter to sit in, and you can like feed it up through the back or wherever it needs to go. And as you can see on this little logo, it goes right around the waist. They also have thigh belts. I don't see one in this kit, but we do have those. Or they even have ankle belts. You know, really, it's not going to work anywhere because obviously it's going to leave a bulge wherever you put it. And sometimes it's just not going to work because it's a lady wearing a super tight dress. And so sometimes they'll put a lav like strapped on their ankle under something and weave it all the way up to their head. And they can do that by, that's not what I want, actually the other side. They have these little undercovers. Yeah, these little stickies and these undercovers where you feed the lav up through there, you peel off the back, and it's just like tape, and you stick it to their skin. And you want to put the lav usually right around the chest for film. A lot of stage actors, they have the ear mics, they have the hair mics. But for film, we use a lot of the chest because it's easier to conceal with their clothing, whether they have multiple layers or whatever. So these you would use to stick it to the person's skin, and then we have other things, like if you put it between layers of clothes, you overcover so that if clothes rub on it, then it doesn't pick up on it rubbing as much.
Wiring people up is, it's been my experience that oftentimes it's a challenge for reasons that explain this. There's clothing noise. Last night we were talking a little bit about, you know, even the cable that runs from the microphone down, if it's rubbing on clothes.
Yeah.
So it's finding that thing, and you talk about between the head and the chest. There's a, I guess, frequency difference between the two. It sounds different.
Yeah.
Microphone on the head and a microphone on the chest just sounds different.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of go with what works. And a lot of times you end up with compromises, you know, to make it work.
So if you're in a situation where you use either shotgun or a lavalier, do you usually tend to go for the shotgun?
I was about to say, yeah. You're almost always going to go for the shotgun mic because it has a more natural sound to it. Because the lav is on the person's body, you'll get a lot of the resonance. Because most of us, do we have any singers in here? No, just me. Cool. So when you sing, they have there's different parts of the voice. There's mainly chest voice and head voice. And so your more natural, like this tone that I speak at is in chest voice. I can feel the frequency and the vibration more in my chest. Where if I talk or sing higher, then the resonance is in your head more. But since people talk and it comes from the chest, then that's transferring right into the mic. And so it'd be a lot boomier, as we say, a lot deeper, whether in contrast to the boom, you do want to aim for the chest just because that's where it's a bigger target, you're less likely to hit other stuff, and That is, you get the resonance with the clear speech from the mouth. But yeah, you're gonna usually want to go for the shotgun, and the lav is like an adjust in case kind of deal.
No, we were talking about this last night too, is, you know, where does it sound most natural? My ear isn't on your chest.
Exactly, yeah.
And usually there's a, you know, foot or two between what my ear and your mouth. And with that, you have just kind of, there's some air between the person speaking and the microphone.
Exactly.
So oftentimes, and most often, there's a couple $100 lavalier microphone. The most expensive part is the transmitter receiver. Whereas the shotgun microphone is probably up to $1,000 or $2,000.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, and usually the most expensive thing is the higher quality. Has just better
Components.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about how the shotgun mic is that very narrow pickup pattern. The lavalier mics are omnidirectional, so it'll pick up sound equally as strong from all angles. And so that means you're going to get whatever else is happening on set and their voice instead of just their voice. All right, the boom pole is probably one of the more recognized parts of a location sound person's arsenal. An extender pole that has many different lengths. This is luckily a pretty tall room, so we can get pretty long in here. And they have boom poles that go like up to 30 feet. They have many varying lengths of boom poles. This is fully extended, so probably about 9 feet. Yeah, 8 feet, 9 feet, something like that. Not probably 8 feet. And so this would be really good for an indoor shot, but maybe for an outdoor shoot where if we're doing a wide, long angle, or not a wide, long, just a wide angle, because the boom person nor the pole can be seen in the shot, right? Because that just, in the Western times, they didn't have boom poles. You're going to want a really long pole so that you can get good audio, you can reach it while still being out of frame. So that's what the boom pole does. And we'll build it up real quick. Where's my gun? Here we always attach this pistol grip to it, and usually you want to twist the pistol grip or the pole into the grip. You just twist that right on. And we'll take take the mic and it just slips into the shock mount. And so the shock mount will let me bump it and see how it's not hitting much. You don't want to bump the mic, but it keeps it stable. It doesn't transfer as much of the movement of the pole into the mic. And with these are really nice. I think almost all of ours here are internally cabled mics. So that means that we have an XLR cable. That's what the 3-pronged cable looks like. The XLR cable feeds through the pole, and we plug into there. And then down at the bottom, we have an output right here on the bottom that will plug our other end into. And so that way, back before they had these internally wired cables, you'd have to wrap the cable around the boom pole so that it didn't sway or smack it as much. But these are super nice. We do not have to worry about that. So the next bit is, all right, so if you're very lucky and you're shooting outside, it'll be a perfectly clear day, it'll be 0 wind, but that is almost never the case. And even then, you want to be careful and put a cover on your shotgun mic. There you go. And so there are 2 different types of cover. I grabbed one without a blip. That's okay. Blips aren't used as much in this program. But there are blips and dead cats. This is kind of a hybrid one. A dead cat is a very fuzzy, furry overlay that goes on the mic, just slides right on. And that protects it from wind. So the wind will hit these hairs, and I think this one also has foam inside, and will deaden any wind coming in. Because what the mic is a good example of this. There's a microphone that attaches to one of our recorders, and inside this capsule, there's 2 little metal plates that are connected to electric wires. And when any air pressure hits the mic, it'll transform into an electric signal, and that'll create the signal that can be read into storage. And so those wavelengths that are created by air pressure, because all sound is just varying air pressure. When it hits the capsule, as it's called, those 2 metal plates, it'll make it move. And so if there's wind, which is a lot of strong air pressure, and it's just hitting that, then you get that hiss, that like super annoying sound that's really hard to take out and almost impossible to take out in post-production. But the dead cats and the blimps, which is just something, the blimp is, I think I have one of those kits I'll grab later to show you guys, but it just goes over the entire apparatus, and it looks like a blimp, like a Zeppelin. And it covers it, and you can put even another dead cat over the whole thing. So it has the soft air protection and the hard air protection. Yes?
So what's the difference between the blimp and the dead cat?
So the blimps, so the dead cats really just refer to it has hair on it. So this is a dead cat cover. Yeah, it doesn't have a name on it, but that's what kind of the industry called it. So there are like foam covers, that are pure foam, like this, that can go over it, and that's a lot lighter air protection. And I'll usually throw this on even if we're shooting indoors, just in case.
Yeah, I would perhaps say that microphone, the diaphragm, the electronics, everything else involved with it is very sensitive. So even without any protection, I'll call it protection, wind protection, if you have that shotgun microphone and you just in here swinging around, you hear that the wind hitting it.
Yeah, if you're
So
moving
even
back
if
to
you're
the
doing an interior shot, put a foam windscreen on it. Because one, in case hopefully, if it does get bumped, and hopefully it's just lightning, you're not going to damage the microphone. And so there's that protection. And 2, just cueing from one person to the next person to the next person, as you're swinging it, you can hear that wind hit the elements of the microphone. Once you go outside, you have a slip-on windscreen that will probably go up to maybe 10-mile-an-hour winds or so. The blimp, it looks like a Zeppelin blimp, and it's hollow inside. And what happens is, with the dead cat cover on that furry part, there's an airspace between what's the wind hitting it. So there's airspace between the microphone and the outside, so the wind has some time to dissipate before it hits the microphone and protect you even better. I've been in major windstorms and had a big Zeppelin with big furry wings on it, and I never hear it. If you have the right mount and the right microphone and the right Zeppelin, this is a Sennheiser Zeppelin that screws the end and you slip on the.
So the blimp basically just gives more space for the microphone to, like for the wind to dissipate, but was actually getting rid of the wind is the diaphragm.
Well,
Yeah, so see how this has a thin mesh shield, so that'll dissipate light wind and stuff like that, but then the dead cat will get heavier winds. And the longer the hair is not like, you see this is very long haired, whereas this is a lot shorter. So the longer hairs are going to dissipate more wind.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the right.
Yeah, this pistol grip doesn't.
Yeah, because that's a right pistol
Yeah.
grip.
So.
But basically, it slips on kind of how he's showing you.
Yeah.
It slips on, you cap it back, and now you have this. They also make a cover that's like felt, so for a lighter wind, and then you get a more higher wind. There's the slip-on windscreen, you know, just that simple ride coat. I'll give those called ride coats.
Yeah, that's the brand that makes them.
Ride coat makes them, and
This is a Road one.
yeah, Road makes them, and ride coat makes them manufacturer. And just kind of depends. That's just another tool, depending on what your situation is.
Yeah, so you see us, I slip this over. It's very hairy. It looks like a cat.
Yeah. I have a mixer friend. He and another friend of ours made a custom blimp, and it's about this big around. And what it does is, so that diameter is smaller. The larger diameter Zeppelin around, it's even more wind can hit it. There's more space between the outside and the microphone for the wind, the air to dissipate. And I've been, like I said, using that setup. It's really funky looking, and it's heavy. But you need it in order to, the role, capture the dialogue, the cleanest, that you can. So.
Yeah, so those, you always want to, you want to get as much protection to block out any wind. Usually don't want to overdo it because the sound is an airwave. So if you're interrupting the airwaves too much, then your sound is going to be a little muffled. And so you got to find that happy medium. And so as you were saying, you almost always want to have a little bit, at least a little bit of the foam, just to get that movement, to get anything like that. But if I put a whole blimp in dead cat and it's an indoor scene with no wind, that's just unnecessary.
Actually will affect your high end,
Yeah.
your high frequencies.
Yeah, your higher, shorter frequencies, which are less powerful. Moving up, our recording devices, so our mic, kind of our signal flow goes from the sound, the airwaves hit the mic, will travel down the cord. The cord will go into one of these preamps, which the boom operator will wear. I'll get into those in a little bit. And the preamp will go into a recorder. This is what has become the industry standard recorder, mostly because it's small while still being super versatile. And so this is a Zoom F8N. It has 8 audio inputs. Just this tiny thing, which is really cool. The other one that we used to use a lot was a 664. It was probably double the size with only 6 inputs. And so these are really awesome tools for mixers. But this will store and record your audio for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about mixers later on. Was it you said you had to leave right at 7? Or it was someone emailed me, but I don't know if they're here, so these are these. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. So there's this one. Zoom also makes handheld ones. So this is the H6N. It has, I guess, technically 6 inputs, 4 outside, and then you can do 2 up top. That's what this is. It just plugs in. And this is, if you are just getting started in mixing freelance on your own, this is a really it's a good starter mixer and recorder because you can still do pretty on-the-fly gain adjustments or volume adjustments. And this one is $300. Yeah, where this one's probably around $1,000. So. Yeah, these ones are really good. The guy who teaches the production sound class here said he used this for his first 3 years until he switched to, I think it was a 664. But yeah, so there's a bunch of different, there are on-camera mixers. So if you look at the XC15 back there, up top of it, where all those cables are going into it, that's an on-camera mixer. And that's just going to store all the sound in the camera with the video, so it's already in sync. Or if you do it with this, you have to sync the audio and the video in post. I'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about mixers, the advantage of using a mixer separate. There are really 2 different cords that we use. The main one that's going to transfer, someone did not quote this very well. It's probably me. The main one that's going to transfer your audio is going to be an XLR cord. So again, that's a 3-prong cord. And that is mostly what you use. The only other thing is with headphones. This is a 1/4-inch TRS adapter. or just headphone people use. But TRS, because it's a tip, there's a little ring, and then there's a sleeve. And so there's the 1/4 inch and the 1/8 inch. This one's probably very familiar to you. But I just put a adapter because we're going to need a larger size later. And the advantage of using the 1/4 inch versus the 1/8 inch is stability. It's a longer thing, it's a longer connector, and so it's less likely to fall out or get damaged when you bump it, just because it's more securely in there. All right, so now that you kind of know the equipment, we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing on set. So it's important for you guys have been learning this in 187, learning what all the departments do. So here's a list of all the different teams and departments, and there's a lot of people within these departments that do a lot of different things. So the director's team, they're mainly in charge of how the film looks and what the actors are doing, what the camera's doing, along with the photography team, which though it sounds like they're just capturing stills, they are very skilled though. The director of photography who's in charge of camera placement and build and setup and all that. And they work a lot with the director. The producer, you guys are in 187, which is beginning production management. Deal a lot with scheduling, with budget, mainly budget, that's their big thing. And then also, they're really in charge of hiring everyone else. And I mean, you guys know what that is. Locations, when they're on set, the locations people are making sure that rules are being kept on the location. They'll know like, oh, we cannot light a fire in here. When we signed our contract, we said we would not use fire or anything, or you can't go in this part of the house because that's the private area and this is a private residence. And so a lot of that thing. Grip is lighting, sound, which is the best department. The arts department, which is set dressing and all that, costumes, hair and makeup, special effects, if you are doing fire or explosions or anything like that, and then stunts, which works a lot with special effects. But specifically for us in the sound department, we need to know set language. And there's a ton of it. I don't want to get into it too much. But I'll mostly talk about kind of what we need to listen for when we're on set. So when, I should have written more down about it so I remember. When we're getting ready to shoot, usually the camera people are camera or costumes. Usually costumes are taking the most time. But sound, you never want people to be waiting for sound. If you have to wait or hold for sound because we're not ready, then we have epically failed. And so we try to set up and be as ready as possible, as quick as possible. And we wait for the call for pictures up, which means that the camera's ready to go and they're ready to film. And that is like when everyone, like when they hear that, everyone's like, okay, this is happening, we're about to make a movie. And so then we'll get into we'll be like prepped for our final positions, and then they'll call roll sound. And so roll sound is always going to start recording before the camera records. And so let's say I'm the mixer, and that table's the boom operator for now. So the boom operator is just ready in position, holding the mic at the subject or whatever's being recorded. When the assistant director, the AD, calls roll sound, I'll push the record button, and I'll say back sound speed, meaning it's recording, we're good to go. And then they'll roll picture, they'll do the clapper, which will help with syncing the time for the sound and video, and then they do the scene until it's cut. And then on cut, we stop the recording for the mixer and wait for further instructions if we're going to do the same scene again or if we're moving on. And Courtney is going to, if she hasn't already, is going to talk a little bit more. But that's the things that we really need to be looking or listening out for. Is pictures up, and that means like we need to be ready to go ASAP or do our get into final positions. Roll sound, reply sound speed if you're a mixer, and then cut. Anything else significant to add on language?
Well, we talked briefly earlier, I mean, it's a whole new glossary whole new language.
Yeah.
I mean, you experienced some of it with your grip class. I don't know if you attended that or not, but everything has a name, and it's all new equipment. The one I always kind of laugh at, because most people, what's a honey wagon? You probably want to experience that, but a honey wagon is usually a couple offices and dressing rooms and the restrooms. It's a portable system. Or what's a C-47? Did you go over that? What's a C-47? You ever hear of that?
It's a closed clip.
Yeah, it's a,
Closed pin or whatever.
clothespin, yeah, a wooden clothespin.
But they can't call it that because wardrobe has their own clothespins and they're different. So there's a fun story about how,
I think, let's see.
I think the story
The
was,
story was it was a line item on the budget for the accountant called, what's the line
It
item?
was whatever.
C-47. That's what they're called.
so for the rest of their time, it's
Yeah.
the C-47 clips.
And they're used for a lot of things. That they're used to hold gels onto the lights. They're using a little wedge to balance a table. A lot of different things. So it's, the other one I think I mentioned is sides.
Which are the parts of the script
Smaller version of the script, like what you're shooting that day. That's the sides. Usually at the beginning of the day.
or whatever. Someone was auditioning, they're only reading that side.
So there's a whole new language, and it's
Yeah.
kind of fun. Dressing appropriately, introducing yourselves to different departments, who you are and what you do. Since everybody's new and everyone's learning, it's a great opportunity everyone's there to hopefully have a collaborative effort, right? And be self-aware. Don't touch anyone else's equipment. If you're the sound department for that day, don't move a light. Don't even move an extension cord. That brings up another glossary item. An extension cord, a power cord, it's called a stinger. Yeah, reach out, stinger, right? For power. And just learning all those things is, and then if you need to be somewhere, you're carrying stuff and something's in your way, who put this in my way? No. Hey, is it okay if we move this so I can get through? Just learning kind of self-aware and being polite, right?
And the great thing about these early student productions, well, the AMPs can be super intense. They're like, everyone's super understanding. Like we're friendly on our AMPs. It's not as high stress. You have a question?
Yes, so you said be in the right place at the right time. Let's
Yeah.
say you make a mistake and you point slightly off or something. How forgiving is sound mixing usually in post-production?
We will talk about that right next. We'll talk about being on axis or not. But that's mostly right place, right time. It's just like if they're moving lights around, they're changing scenes, don't be in the middle of the set when they're trying to move stuff. Get off to the side, be in the right place, be within earshot so you know when they're ready, when they're done. But don't be in the way. Be just enough out of the way, but still, because sound, unfortunately, is one of the most unnoticed departments. People don't care about sound unless something's going wrong in sound. And so our goal is to be out of the way, not make people mad, not make them notice us in that way, but not be so far out of the way where they forget about us.
Yeah. Also, I think with that too is, you're the mixer and you're the boom operator for the mixer is, oh, you need to go, you're gonna go hit the craft service table or you need to go to the restroom. Let somebody know where you are. Otherwise, especially as a boom operator, you're watching the setup. You're watching how they're gliding, and you're watching how the rehearsals are going. So you're watching all that. If you're off somewhere else and they have to go looking for you, that's not where you want to be.
Yeah. So always follow the chain of command. In the sound department, it's a really small chain of command. The boom operators tell the sound mixer, who's usually supervising sound on that set, what's going on, what they're doing. Some boom ops, like I might ask one of you guys to go help put a lavalier, go away and go put a mic on the costume, go to the costume department and help put a mic on, and then come back. And so I can send you to go do stuff, but Yeah, so it's a lot of collaboration. Follow the chain. You don't want to jump the chain. Boom ops don't talk directly to the director, hardly ever. The sound mixer rarely talks to the director. No one talks to the director except the AD. Usually, everything usually goes through the AD, but it'll follow boom ops to the key sound person or the sound supervisor, and then to the AD, to the director. So there's a very, there's a social layer.
There's a social matter, but it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
You think about all the pressure and what the director is thinking is not only what is happening visually, but how the actors are performing and directing them, helping directing what the shot is, and the look to the director of photography. But the director, I guess, don't ask, in this case, the example, don't ask the director a question when the assistant director or even the PA answered that same question. So you want to, because they're thinking about the next shot, they're thinking about the whole film, there's a lot going on in their minds. So, and I think that's true for anybody. As a sound department, if there's a problem somewhere with another department, you as a boom operator wouldn't go talk to that sound, or say it's the lighting department or a grip department. Usually you're going to pass through to your head of your department. They'll talk to that head of that department and see if they can resolve it or whatever it might be. So just kind of keep that in mind as far as how you communicate with each other.
I'm going back a little bit to dress appropriately. Stay comfortable, but professional. And the really important thing is what you're wearing on your feet, because you're going to be on your feet a lot. You could be shooting 12-hour days or whatever and not get a lot of time to sit down, so you're going to want to wear comfortable shoes, but quiet shoes. I wore these shoes today because they squeak. And so I don't know if they're going to squeak right now. So I would not wear these on set because of that squeak, because these microphones are so sensitive that if I'm booming and I have to walk while I boom, that squeak is going to be obvious. And so you want to wear really quiet shoes, not shoes that click, not shoes that, like these would normally be really good shoes because of the rubber soles, but I have an insole in them, and that's what squeaks. So if I took out the insole, it might work, but I probably won't wear them at all because I don't know, I haven't taken the insoles out in a long time. But yeah. Any questions on set etiquette? The sound report is mainly the mixer will worry about it. I might have, there are some days, at least for Ballad of the Westwind Kid, where there are 2 boom ops scheduled. And so during that, I might have one person boom opping, one person cable wrangling, or just making sure we have the correct length of cables. And we'll talk about cable coiling and all that in a little bit. And that cable wrangler might also be helping me take notes on that sound report. So on the sound report, you have the scene, whether it's scene 1A or whatever, the number of take, and then any notes. So if scene 1, take 1 was a perfect take sound-wise and video-wise, then we can kind of check that off, like this is the recording we're going to use or whatever. Or if that one was trash, like scene 1, take 1, a car drove by and radio or audio. We'll write that down. And in the recorder, there's a naming and numbering scheme for each recording. So yeah, you have the title of the production, who's on the mixer, any contacts for that, and this will get, a copy will stay with the sound mixer, but it'll also be handed to, is it the scripty who would take them? Or a PA or AD? But again,
So I'm trying to,
I think it's
I'm going to show my age because during a film break, back in the day, it would go to the script and then also,
DIT.
yeah, and that day it was a loader.
Yeah.
During the film, it was a loader, and now it's the DIT. who's
That's a good point, yeah, it would probably be
putting the
DIT.
sound report with the media that you recorded, and they're going to turn that in and get it
I
processed.
didn't put DIT in the list of teams. DIT is, they don't talk about it a whole lot in 187. It's the person who takes all of the footage, both video and audio, and they organize it. Their file management, all that, making sure it's in the right
Backups.
format, backups. And so we'll give that to them, and they can make a note or put a file in the folder saying, this was the best take. use this so that the editor, when they go into the file, they can see, oh, it's this take. They don't have to sort through every take to find the right one. So sound reports, very handy. All right, microphones. There are 6, these two are practically the same, but there are 6 pickup patterns. So in these diagrams, right in the middle, that's where the microphone is. And so we have omnidirectional mics, which those lavaliers are omnidirectional. You can see that's just a full circle. It's picking up equal strength everywhere. This is, I think, also an omnidirectional mic. So, yeah. And then there's bidirectional, which as you can see, it's picking up the front and the back, and it's going to cut out anything coming in from the sides. And like on that mic we have back there on that stand, it has 3 different modes. It has an omnidirectional mode, it has a bidirectional mode, and then it has a cardioid mode. And it can switch between that pretty easily. And that just, I don't know, someday I'm going to learn how it does it. I don't know right now. I'll study it eventually. How it switches, I think, has to do with electrical magnetism. But yeah, so the cardioid is very common for podcasts, for like desk recordings, YouTubers, anything like that. They'll use a cardioid because it picks up what's right there in a pretty wide stage so they can move around and still get picked up pretty well, and it cuts out anything from behind. I guess not. And we have supercardioid and hypercardioid, which are similar to, they're kind of a baby between cardioid and bidirectional. You get a lot up front and then a little bit in the back. And then the shotgun, which is kind of weird looking. You get very strong from the front, a little bit from the back, and a tiny, tiny bit on the sides. But it is especially useful for that, that straight-on position. Oh, yes. So those are the different pickup patterns, and those are pickup patterns. And on a shotgun mic, for those condenser mics, which I was talking about, that's a condenser mic is when it means it has those 2 metal plates, and that's how it picks up its sound. And there's dynamic plates, which have a diaphragm, which doesn't require any electrical connection, but it's a little more rugged, and it just uses a diaphragm to kind of send those electrical signals instead of having the more sensitive condenser mics. And a lot of this, it's fine if it goes over your head. You don't need to know it for boom operation. It's just, you'll learn it if you try to go into sound more. Those condenser mics, though, which are almost exclusively what we use on set, they require power. So we use phantom power, which is 48 volts of electricity that is sent through the XLR cable into the microphone. And the microphones won't work without that phantom power. Use this just because it's easy. Oh, I can put batteries. Grab the batteries. I might go grab batteries real quick. But I'll finish this slide and then we'll take a break and I'll go grab those. So yeah, like I said before, when I was talking about the different mics, shotgun mic is a shotgun pickup pattern. A lot of mics are omnidirectional pickup patterns. I already talked about those. Yeah, I think. Cool, yeah. Well, let's take a 5-minute break. If we need to use the restroom or get a drink or anything like that, and I'll go get batteries and set up our more interactive portion of the class. So, since this is such a, I might be standing in that corner. I'm putting baby in the corner. It's like 30 seconds. I got a long boom pole in the corner.
Really?
I want to make sure I don't get feedback. Oh, good point, out of frame.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Our second one moved on.
When you're lengthening and shortening a boom pole, you usually want to start by lengthening the top and then go down. It's a lot easier. Same want to start at the top. Because then if they want the tripod higher, then you just have to lift it, and then you can drop it, and it's a lot easier. So start from the top and work your way down. So I have the first two extended all the way. And we're going to demonstrate on and off axis. So you want to get the mic pointing right about his chest. So let's have you recite something. Preamble of the Constitution, 13th Article of Faith, something.
We the people, in order to form a perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for a common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Did you guys hear in the speaker? Yeah. If I turn it up too much, I'll get feedback,
Right.
unfortunately. But
Maybe we could, close proximity to the, the tree.
that's true. That would be better. So now bring yourself here. Speak to me.
His arms are heavy, knees are weak, mom's spaghetti. On his spaghetti already, spaghetti. He's nervous, but on the spaghetti, he looks surface to look calm. Spaghetti.
You guys hear, even if I turn it a little bit off,
Oh, there goes gravity.
it's
Oh, there
a lot
goes spaghetti.
less powerful.
He choked on the spaghetti because it happened baby.
So yeah, so you gotta be super vigilant as you're boom mopping to make sure you're right on target, because these mics are so directional. Even if you're a little bit off, it's obvious. So that's the high stress thing about being in sound is you don't get as much notice, yada yada. They really expect you to do your job and to do it well. And so there's a lot weighing on half of the film is riding on our shoulders. So it's really important that you're engaged, you're on focus when you're working, because if it's a long scene, if it's like a 2-minute scene, and it's your 30th take, you're just like, I don't want to be here anymore. You just gotta let it through, and you start going off axis. What if that was the perfect take? That 30th take was perfect, and you missed it, and then I have to tell the director, sorry, we have to do it again because the sound is bad, and then everyone cries, especially me. I'm very emotional.
Oh, one more thing, David.
Yes.
Something that I mess up on sometimes when I'm on set or when I'm boom mopping is, let's say the sound just dies, like the sound just cuts out. Let's say the batteries die or something bad happens. You just give up and you want to be like, oh, the sound died, but that could be the perfect take too, and they could just add the sound to it later. It could be a coverage shot that they're doing and the dialogue and the facial expressions are great there and they want to use that take later. But let's say the poom pole dies and you rest to look at it and then it's in shot, no matter what happens, just listen to, only give up when the director tells you to give up, and he'll never tell you to give up. And I'll never tell anybody to give up. David will never tell anybody to give up, That's more of a figurative way to put it, but just, don't get in the way of things. You can just tell after. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll work it out.
You don't want to disrupt a take ever, for any reason. Unless there's a fire, unless there's physical danger, then you can disrupt the take. But hopefully that never happens. All right, this was a really big thing they made me talk about when I taught this in a 105 class, is taking care of your equipment. Unfortunately, sometimes these beautiful BYU students are not careful with their equipment. And when we were moving here from the HVAC, your gorgeous sound supervisor went through every single boom kit and made sure they all had functioning parts. And so, if you don't take care of your equipment, you're hurting me. And you're making me come in and work more, which yes, I need the money, but I can also be doing so many other things. So take care of your equipment by keeping the mics especially stored in padded, dry containers because those are electrical components inside. If it gets wet, it's probably dead. And they're super sensitive. If you drop it, you can break the capsule. So you'll notice every time I'm not using the boom pole, it gets rested on the table. And it's okay if the head is off of just a little bit, like it's a little bit off the table right now, that's okay because I don't want it necessarily hard resting on the table. Or depending on the shoot, they sometimes have a specific boom stand, where it's just like a C-stand, like a lighting stand with a hook on it, or 2 hooks, that you just, like it's a display case. You just put it on there and it just suspends. But I don't like using those as much as tables because then people, when they walk past, can bump it and fling it off. Tables I like because if you bump it, you're going to bump the table and it's not going to fall off. So just make sure that you're doing that correctly. Be aware of your surroundings when you're booming. You guys have probably seen this video, but I kind of love it. And it just displays this so well. It will let me pull it up. Good job. 2 seconds, let me get an hour ago. Okay, it should be, that needs to be. Yes.
This collection represents 35 years of my life. Oh, careful. Our journey begins with this mic.
There's my phone.
Whoa!
Now, what did Dave do wrong?
So I've got my essay written.
He didn't use Grammarly.
He did not use Grammarly. That was his
He did
problem.
not use Grammarly. Dave was not being careful with the surroundings of the boom mic. And now that video is probably staged, but it is a great example of the catastrophic things that can happen if you're not aware of your surroundings. Or it can be little things. You do have to be aware of the grip department in lighting because when you're booming, you don't want the shadow of the boom anywhere. And so that's where you coordinate with the lighting department and the camera department to see where you can stand and where you can put the mic so that it's not going to be in frame. I wish so in the video you saw he was booming, the boom got into the camera, and then when he lifted it, it got caught in the fan. One of the easiest and best ways to measure your, like where your mic should be, because you want it just out of frame. You want the mic as close to the subject as possible so that you can get uninterrupted audio, because the more stuff that's between the subject and the mic, the more interference can happen. And so when you are testing your distance, some people will start out of frame and then go down. An easier way, I think, and a quicker way, is to start with the mic in the frame, and then usually the mixer is standing by near the camera, and I would say, all right, lift it up, lift it up, lift it up. All right, you're out of frame. And so you just stick there. And you don't go any lower than this, but you just kind of memorize this position, like this is out of frame. So maybe go 1/2 inch up, just for a little bit of wiggle room. But start in frame and then move up, and boom. That's where you're saying. You don't want to move too much from that. In most films, if you're switching between subjects, they'll usually also cut the camera, or use a different take or whatever, but you still want to keep very consistent point at whoever's talking, unless told otherwise. Your pole is not a gaffy stick. You're not Ewoks or Tusken Raiders. That's for my Star Wars fans. Meaning don't slam the pole on the ground. These poles are really nice because they have the side outlet, but we have about half of our boom poles, the outlet's on the bottom side. So if they're cord plugged in, don't let it touch the ground because you can damage to the connectors on the cords. So make sure it's suspended, don't slam it, don't do anything that would hurt your tools. Yeah, between scenes, or if you're not actively holding the mic, you put on a table, put on a stand, or you can just, if it's unplugged, if there's no cord attached to it, you can put it in the corner just resting. Yeah, cool.
I would make sure that you guys, everybody practice unlocking, extending it.
Yeah, we're about to do that. We're about to get hands on boom poles and
Yeah,
cables.
just having that practice, even while you're on set, when they, if you're done with, they say cut, and you're reaching out there and your boom pole's extended, remember, don't just put it down, always check. If you put the pole down and the mic goes up, what's up there? Is it a light, is there a ceiling? Always check your surroundings. Maybe once it's safe, you're bringing it down, you're collapsing it, making it safe, and then you're moving off the set, and moving off the actual set of the shooting, and getting out of the way, and then back again. So always be aware of that. That's a great point.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move back there and get you guys hands on with boom kits.
Find that you don't want to loosen it too much, and you don't want to tighten it.
Yeah, so just keep it at happy medium. This is
Extend it,
short, short.
tighten it. Should just take, half a turn or so to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And then tighten it back up.
Just really just enough so that it starts turning easy. Like it'll hit a difficult point. So yeah, extend your boom all the way out. Oh yeah, sorry, that one was hidden.
So whatever way you're holding it, whether it's natural, I think I'm left-handed most of the time, so on my left side, so I'm listening that way. Just kind of get that feel of, doing it that way if you're right-handed, knowing which way is locked, which way is loose, tight. You notice too, that I'm not just holding it all back here and extending it out there, so I'll start doing it so it's equally distant on both sides as I'm extending it and then getting into position. Just practice loosening it, collapsing it, going back.
Part am I supposed to twist you? Is it this or? Yeah, all of these textured rings.
Yeah, like this one's a little weird because if I try to loosen this one, I have to read. Sometimes if I'm trying to loosen this section, but the whole thing's twisting,
Yeah.
I might loosen the bottom one, hold it just below it, loosen it, and extend it.
Yeah, a lot of times that happens.
So, kind of get a feel for it. You'll kind of figure it out. But just get used to extending it and collapsing it.
Do you want to grab that sound devices preamp?
Yeah, it gets kind of dark.
Yes, that's it. Sorry. Was that? Yeah, so yeah, these are all, I think, except that one, are all ones that have bottom mounted
Yeah.
XLR inputs.
So especially if it's a bottom mount and you're kind of in between, I was always taught that I never put the bottom of the boom ball on the ground. I usually, if you can see my feet, I'm doing that. I put it on my shoe. But when there's a connection on the bottom, you don't want to do that either. Between takes or between setups, I'd always tell my mixer, in this case, if I'm going to unplug, hey, I'm unplugging, because just like you, they're wearing headphones too. It's going to cause a big pop if he doesn't fade it down, or if you don't fade it down or turn it on.
Turn off the phantom power.
Yeah, turn off the power supply. That's right, you guys do it a little differently. Each one of you will also be wearing that power supply that is providing power for the microphone, and it's also providing a headphone feed for you guys to listen. So turning it off, then unplugging, telling your mixer that what you're doing before you're doing that. I know a lot of your stuff, you're doing it, you guys are within just feet of each other, but I'm used to doing it where the mixer's in the next room, especially if we're doing an interior, there's not a whole lot of space. So, but just communicate that way. Put everything in a safe place.
I think we only have 5 more of these. So yeah, we're going to go down the line The mic might be in one of the top bags, one of the top zipper pockets.
I would be cursing your name on a tall actor like you.
That's gonna wear the preamp.
Check out the stuff.
Plug it in.
Follow your roommates around, have them talk and walk. Sometimes knit gloves might help. I got used to always having a bandana in my back pocket to help if I need to do a little bit of, check this out. So if I'm moving here, I need to reach out here and back again, but I can do a little bit of slide, that's pretty quietly, you know? It's a nice thing to have. Bandana or a glove. He's talking about rings.
Yeah.
So that's going to get transferred all the way down the boom pole, create noise to your microphone. Yeah. See, these are a little bit different. See the difference between this mount? This one is actually made for this, that one, which is great. And then this mount here is a little bit different, it's the right coder. And this is called a shock mount.
Let me grab it here.
So that's, yeah, definitely kind of idea. There's definitely a front and back. Some people do is, I usually put a finger underneath it and snap it in like that.
Put this on the speaker.
And then maybe a little bit forward, because what we'll do is, so, yeah. See if that will go on there. That's the idea.
On Sunday night, Thursday.
I guess I'm just saying the million times.
So are you going to Thursday?
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah.
How much is that?
About 40.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's
Is it here? Is it here?
no,
The high school.
yeah.
Oh, right here, right over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Kind of slip that on.
Isn't that what we changed?
Yes, it is. Those chairs are not comfortable.
And then, this. This. I'll flatten this out a little bit, more like that. And then you can plug this in here. See if it lines
They can change it, it's something.
Just about that. No, you're good. Yeah, so this,
Yeah.
But it's okay. We didn't.
I think the top should be right here, this little release. So this is a release right here. So it's going to go right there.
All right.
And there's actually a groove here, and if you look at the
So
top,
then plug in your XLR to the bottom,
that's where it would go.
and you're going to plug it into the input on this.
Then, what this creates is a little string relief, but it also helps, because if I touch this here, it's not getting transferred
I thought we had to, but then I removed that. somehow.
directly down through the microphone. So I always make sure there's this little strain relief
This is cool.
there as well. Yeah, that's the idea. So as you extend that out, that changes the weight and everything too.
That was
I'll have this thing.
Like, it's-
I was gonna change it.
What I do is,
Yeah. Just give it a little bit of
yeah,
buffer.
so those there, so if anything wiggles here, see, it's not going to
Yeah.
wiggle, it's going to transfer down here.
Yeah. So
I don't
yeah,
have to be free.
So if you-
I'm gonna check
plug in.
So yeah, plug that in, and plug your headphones into there. Have you used one of these
Pull
before?
slack out.
You want to just get him set on monitoring and then help him test out and kind of check for himself this stuff.
Wiggles are happening down here. Transfer.
Do you usually keep it like perpendicular to
That's a good question. It depends on the shot and what I'm shooting to. If I'm more
So this is loose right
horizontal
there.
to what's happening on, I usually go straight down and just angle it
Backwards,
back.
that's what I know.
Oh,
So it's more,
So left is loose and right is tighter. So this is really tight.
unless I'm wrong.
Yeah,
See, if I was moving him, I'd be like this.
I mean, one of them is actually broken, so that could be the case. I remember one of these was broken.
Okay.
So, I mean, it could just be that this was broken.
He's talking, his head's down a little bit, so I'll might be out a little bit in front and turn it into him like that. So I'm kind of matching the angle of his head, like that. You know, if I'm here and I start doing this,
But it's
most
just-
often the camera's gonna be
actually,
here, and now
yeah.
I'm in the frame.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to watch and get,
Yeah,
does that kind of help?
I think the number one cause of,
So
or like number one,
handling the boom and how to hold it, right?
they're just so fragile. But, I mean,
This,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
that's fine, you can just, hold on.
Yeah, good, that could be that. Okay.
That's a classic picture. Boom.
Is it like
Star Wars, the guy in pink
No,
shorts.
it's not actually right backwards.
Have you ever seen it? That's from the original Star Wars.
Okay.
Don't be, like if your subject's over here and you're holding it out here, it's a lot harder to be holding this than to be kind of square with your body and your arms equal distance from each other. So if I was moving these guys and I'd be doing this, or if the camera's right there at that pedestal, you know, I'm off to the side, moving these guys. That way, if you start off, your arms are equal on both sides, you have some leeway going out and coming back. But if you start off and you're out here, he moves further away, I gotta have to walk with him. Or if I start here, I have, before I take a step and potentially create noise, right, with my footsteps, I have a little bit of room going back and forth, I can a little
Let me turn
closer.
up the fancy power. Okay.
This is the one right here. And this.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense? It's
But.
difficult to kind of make it natural.
Do you ever see
You got it.
and then have this? Or
Good endurance in your shoulders.
Because as soon as you rest it on something, my hands on my shoulder, those
You're
are
at
interference, and if there's a movement, you have
My voice is not
to
going to
grab
from
your
my
hand,
hand.
loophole,
Like an
create
average
noise,
voice.
that's gonna happen.
So like, it's the average things, the average voice.
So you always want to have that.
Maybe
Yeah.
if they
don't want to touch
have
your
a
body.
high voice, you know,
You
you
see
might
how
want to be
I'm
aiming
holding
more towards their
my
chest.
front hand,
It's
I usually have
lower
to loose and
frequencies,
I'm rotating
more
on.
deeper things.
Some people are just
And if it's,
straight on gripping
you know, if you're getting
But I
like
find that if I'm doing, you know,
really
kind
deep
of cupping
voice,
front,
you know, if, depending on what the
you know,
director
and
wants to
kind of
capture,
shorter back, I'm a
if you
little
like
light.
want some really deep resonating, or just really boomy voice,
Yeah.
or if it really contrasts too much with the other person.
Oh, and this brings up a
voice, you know.
good point.
Yeah.
Even now that I'm practicing, I'm starting to feel something.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Grab that 8-pound weight that
I'll
you're
grab that.
rooming have, the 10-pound weight, and seriously, that week or two
I'm
before,
gonna go.
just simply do this. Do 2 or 3 reps on each arm. Makes all the difference in the world. Seriously, you know,
sustained.
think about it. A page of dialogue is a minute long, right? 2 pages of dialogue are a minute long. If you're holding this thing for 2 minutes, you know, think about that. Put a Zeppelin on the end, it's even more weight.
Yeah.
I'll show you something.
So it's endurance.
Right. So there are times when you can't hold it down here.
And that's easy.
You might have a hard time, other people that are a little shorter. If the camera's here, and shooting David here,
It's a really cool.
I can be closer to the camera, and that's what we want to do is, remember the lens is going from here up to the top of his head, right? I can follow that same line with the boom pole to here and be out of frame. However, if I can't stand there,
There's like a.
I have to stand to the side around. Remember, this frame is like this, right? That means if I'm doing this same technique as I'm doing here, where the camera might be, I can't be doing that here. Because now I'm seeing this in the picture, I have to be horizontal to the top of that frame. Kind of follow me, what I'm saying? Some of my terminology if you have any questions on that, so, yeah.
All right.
It's a
so
challenge.
If you want to grab, let's have that, grab the
Yeah.
preamp. You're going to plug the inputs. You
Headphones.
plug headphones into headphones and then turn
Yeah,
it
you
on.
can take off the camera, they were in there, right? Yeah.
Internal power. So yeah, so usually you always want to be doing overhead booming, but there's also scooping, which is where you hold the boom under, like that. Like that's a joust position scooping technique. So you're holding it with one hand. You usually don't want to do this because you're getting a weirder resonance, like we were talking about earlier.
It sounds very unnatural.
And so, because their chin is there, which sounds weird, but
And the floor, different
Yeah.
rather than the sky.
exactly, yeah. Like Mike Chadbourne, who's the post-production guy for the church. He says,
One.
dirt don't make noise.
That's the hard one.
And so if you have it pointing up, it's going to catch to the face and maybe a little bit of the dirt, but dirt doesn't make sound. If you have it pointing from the bottom, it'll get the head and then the sky. And if a bird flies or an airplane passes by, you're going to pick up that too. And so I've really only seen scooping done in like interviews where it's a studio and it's a very controlled environment and they know that there's not going to be any overhead sound. But almost always it's going to be that above head H, lazy H, whatever the one hand. Yeah.
Because you think about how, remember how you're shooting, you're usually shooting 2 or 3 shots to get that same, just shoot up that scene. That means if you do 2 or 3 takes, different camera angles, and you're doing it all above, and then one camera angle underneath it, and they have to intercut that, it's not going to match. Right? Sonically, it won't match. So if you're going to shoot one, the first one,
So
most likely going to end up shooting all of them. So they all, when you get into cutting to dialogue, it'll all match. But it just sounds more natural being over the head.
I'm trying to wrap up pretty quick here. So while he's doing that, I want you to guys how to coil cables. So grab a wad or roll of cables. And something else when you're putting in and out these XLR cables, they have these little tabs. Make sure you push the tab and pull so you don't strain the connectors. So they'll almost always click when you put them in.
Yeah, same thing here.
There's a click,
Push
you
that.
pull it.
Yeah.
Unravel your coils.
Hold like a remote operator now.
So grab one end and just lay the rest on the ground. This way you don't get coiled super well.
So doing it at like my mouth or my throat area, don't even my chest, you
Yep.
get higher.
So the
You might want to raise
correct.
that your right hand.
So coiling your cables is what you do to make sure that it can be,
Especially when I'm like standing up.
it one, looks good,
Body's gonna be in the shot.
and two,
So if you
keeps
down
the
low,
integrity of the cable good,
Depending where the camera is.
so that it
it's
can
like,
be
from
stored well and unraveled well. This one's not coiled
You
well,
probably
so
get
I have all sorts of
now when the
knots,
camera's out,
unfortunately.
So you can probably get to like right.
So the last person is this kit.
For about.
Didn't do a terrible job because it looks pretty good, but it didn't follow the correct flow.
What we would do on set is.
So
we start
things to
off
consider
like right by hand,
over under.
Yep.
And then
So if you kind of
just-
extend your
and then
cable
take
out,
it perfectly,
everyone kind of does it differently. For me, I'm usually,
So in general, would I want it like have my
so
mic
start with, and
right
right
about
yeah,
here?
so just go ahead and just, well, undo the knots and everything else, so it's on tangle together.
You want to keep it higher and aim it down as much as possible, like down my chest and not like at my chest. Part of the reason is when you aim it like anything other than down, you're gonna get a lot of reflection from other things in the room, like the walls,
Yeah, see, I,
The floor will take a lot of sound.
I'm always
So
going
when you
out.
aim it at the floor, it's
Some
like,
people are.
with the mic, this way, you're getting everything that way instead of just here to ground.
All right, go ahead and just
So,
take the whole thing,
vertical,
it might take a minute or two,
Down.
but it's good
down,
practice.
better. Of course,
It's
sometimes
okay.
it's too harder, but if you do your best, it should be fine.
Yeah. So, you're doing
That
this.
sound good?
Yeah.
So for me,
The other thing
and
is,
one hand is best for you, I start here, I kind of bring it in, it might be a little bit quarter turn, so that's over.
So I'll hear
Consider that over.
conversations they're having.
And the next one, I'm gonna bring it.
Who's your
See this
105
top,
teacher?
it's under.
Alright, so like,
Okay, she's awesome.
yes.
She was my teacher.
So it's kind of hard to, yeah, and that's okay.
So
the first
she wants
one,
me to come in and teach sound for a
first
couple
one's
weeks.
over, right?
You got the first part of the true. Good tracks. Okay.
I think it worked.
Next one.
It'll be the same.
Yep, exactly, you got the idea, and then like that.
Oh.
Yeah, and then next time it's over, so you're going, keep,
Cable.
go on, yeah. Next time,
It's an actual effort.
reach down a little bit
You
further,
want to massacre it as much as possible.
okay,
As you're doing it, like this muscle
and then bring it,
You know, you don't want to just like.
yeah. So don't, remember, you're not bringing it in the same direction.
Okay.
So you're gonna bring it
I hate you, I say.
a little twisted there. Because that's the thing too, is get all the little twists out of it, it'll be a lot easier to see how that is.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. We're gonna have you get the
Yep.
sound device.
or
real
you can
quick.
still grab it like this, but
And
just.
then- Yeah, oh, he has it.
I have the preamp.
Yep,
Great.
that's the idea, except not bring your wrist to
this
the
is
ground
one.
like that.
Oh, okay.
You kind of see that? Keep trying. Yeah, exactly, that's the under, yeah, exactly. So that's the twist.
It's very beautiful.
It's just a,
machinery.
so that's the under,
We want to do first, you want to.
got a knob over
With your XLR cable.
Yeah,
Is there a
look at the hang of it, so you get to the point where I can do it without letting go.
Okay, so you take this.
Over, under, over,
You want to go on this side?
under. And what's great about that
You go one or
is
two.
I can take
Does it
this.
really matter? Just remember between one and two.
Over, under.
So again,
We're learned it a little bit like this, first releasing and doing that. And you get to the
So
point
remember
where
the headphones. Right
go
here.
over and I'm not letting go, now I'm going under, but that's a whole other thing.
And then you're
Yeah,
like,
do it again.
Same
Yeah,
side.
keep practicing. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe because it makes cable connection a lot easier.
Go over,
We'll put that in right there. Very good. It's kind of a weird little input, but then you put it on. And we turn it on here where it says power. Goes into next.
we feel that.
Right. It's already set. This is on power supply, so you don't need to turn this on. Does that make sense? However, if you were just connecting it to something else without a power supply, you need to use the battery, but it doesn't want to go in the battery. Depends on the microphone. Yeah. So you're gonna take this. You put this on too. It's very stylish.
Very expensive accessory.
It's probably one of the more expensive accessories we get. Well, that's one thing too. It'll get kind of tangled sometimes if you have the headphones and the preamp and the boom up. But it'll be fine.
So just kind of an idea too, is you and him have your talk, and then, yeah, and then turn off access, and start hearing the difference. You'll know like if I'm on access or off access, or even, you know, from when you're back 6 or 8 feet, it's sometimes hard to tell if you're close enough to them. But there wasn't sound up here, just wasn't sound up here, you know?
So right now it's saying, you know, right at my chest, you're getting all these resonant frequencies. When it's up there, getting a little more in my mouth and with the higher frequencies, you know. And I feel like a director, I mentioned this to the other guys, they might want like less contrast between voices and people. And it's something that's
Bring it
way
back,
more
what's it
close.
sound like?
If I'm talking
You
now,
hear the distance?
you can hear it
Yeah.
far away. And
And
then
then you bring it back out
right
in
in
place,
place, right there.
and then that's a little off.
Then you can hear me very well. Reading people.
You know, or worse yet, keeps talking and you overshoot.
You can hear me all.
The frequency changes if you're off axis compared to when you're on axis. So that's just something to be aware of as you're doing all that.
Also, if you're like moving it a lot too, you know, like when a train comes over to you, you know, you want to keep it as steady as possible. It's like following actors around, so you don't get that Doppler effect, you know. That's good. So it's always good as well to like hold it pretty high, you know. A lot of boom operators have pretty strong shoulders from the shoulder pressing it all the time, you know. That way, it doesn't echo off the wall. You're not capturing anything other than just being on the floor, you know. Because everything in this room reflects sound in a certain way, and the less of it you get, then obviously me or whoever will get better.
So is that where I've seen you before? At UATV? Or is it?
I am, no, I don't work there.
Okay, yeah.
I was saying earlier,
Right.
something they might do on some
Zip it back
sets
up.
is they'll bring it out,
Yeah.
and then after they say sound speeds, camera rolling, at least that's what we're gonna do on our set. They're gonna be like, we're just gonna wait for the DP, we're gonna wait for me or you just to say set. And then they'll say action, you know, just to make sure everything's all set.
And hopefully not only ask you whether the camera operator or the DP is set, but also ask if the sound set.
Yeah, they
Which
should.
It should be the same respect for each other in all the departments where, is everybody set, you know? But a lot of times the operator will say set. Now, being vertically challenged, right? There's tools, especially coming from the grip department, that can help. It could be an Apple box. You know what an Apple box is? What's an Apple box?
Just like a tiny little.
It's just it's a wooden box, but they have different sizes. You know, a full apple, half apple.
Yeah.
Even using an apple box to stand on, you know, say everyone's set and not really moving, but you can use an apple box and get that height that you need.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where I've had to use a 12-step ladder to be in the set because it's been a long walk talk up to a house, and I'm using a 20-foot boom pole to do it. And I'm on a 12-foot ladder. So I got them all the way from the street, all the way to the house with that 20-foot boom pole on a ladder. But say it's a 4-step ladder or a 6-step ladder, you can help get that where you're able to get out of the frame, but still get boom, the stuff that you need. So
Have you seen the movie that was 1915 or 1914? 19-something teen?
1917.
1917. You know how it's like there's like really big shots, there's like really long takes too. The boom, on one of the shots, they had a 100-foot boom pole, you know, and they stretched across the entire frame just to capture him. And you see a picture of the guy who did it, and he's like the most buff dude you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And just like really broad shoulders, just holding this up. It's crazy. I mean, people go to great lengths to get good sound, you know, if they're good, you know.
As they should.
A good set, as they should. Let's go. Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, pack that up. And then we'll
what else do?
finish up over here.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll probably wrap it up there. The other stuff is mostly about mixers. Pretty much the reason we use a mixer is instead of just recording onto the camera is because mixers have higher fidelity audio. Cameras are built to capture audio, and maybe they'll throw in video, or sorry, vice versa. Cameras are meant to capture video, and sometimes they'll throw in audio recorder. But having separate video and audio means that Zoom S8N is specifically manufactured only to capture audio, and it's going to do phenomenally at that one thing. And there are other things in the settings that are really great for it. I won't get into
Turn this on,
or
and then unplug
it's
it.
1 day training.
Just so, you know,
But
damage free and something.
yeah, that's a production.
That's what I like.
Those are the classes that you can take for the first,
Yeah.
the TMA 384s are the only ones that the film department offers. But and then if you want to get into post-production sound, you have to go through the commercial music department. But
Commercial music department?
Yep.
Dang.
Yeah. I'm in studio recording 2 right now. And they're really cool classes. So if you really want to get into audio, specifically post-production, I think everyone should take that sound acquisition class by Brian Densley, which I just gave you the 1 day trial run on it. But that's a full semester of just looking at production audio. So I really recommend that class. It's really good. Brian Densley is a good interactive teacher. He'll give you a lot of on-hand experience. So yeah, check out these 384R classes. And if you want to get into more post-production, that's what these last 3 are. And I think both of these are only offered in winter semester. So hopefully you get in this semester, and if you want to learn more about sound, you can take that sound acquisition class.
Does it have any prereqs, or can you just take it
No. Well, actually, these classes, all of the 384R classes, you don't even have to be in the film program. I just remembered that. Yeah, because I took the sound acquisition so, because I was looking at being a producer, and then I heard by a little birdie, I didn't tell you this, that if you go into sound, you're way more likely to get in, because right now they're only, are you specific, are you like set on doing sound, or what do you like?
I'm like just doing everything right now.
That's
Like I might edit for this one as well. for the
Cool.
same feed.
Yeah.
I was doing it all.
But if you, like, if you say that you're gonna emphasize in sound, you're more likely to let you in, because right now, there are only 3 people in the entire department that are specifically emphasizing in sound. Me and 2 other people. And I'm the youngest of them, so. But yeah, so I didn't get it the first time, I'm like, I'll give sound a try, because I heard. And so I took that class, and that's when I'm like, oh yeah, sound is super lit. So you can take this class anytime. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you have any questions or anything about the department, about sound, about any opportunities, or if you want to have a movie night, there's my email. And you guys already have it because I've been bombarding you. Yeah, any questions?